Welcome to this edition of the Fitness Roadmap Podcast. I'm Robin Finner, your host, and I'm with Rudy Finner, my co-host. And and today we have a very interesting topic because we talked about the fitness roadmap and getting yourself together and getting ready to do this, different things you can do, different types of exercises. But there comes a point where your body needs a chance to recover.
No.
Absolutely, and I know a lot about that because mine needs a chance to recover pretty often. You're pretty good. You kind of keep going, but once in a while, I will sit back and say, I need a day. Actually, I'll say this. I'll say about once a week, I do kind of take a day from the typical exercise routine. And I might do some other things, which gives my body a chance to recover from what I normally do. So if I'm doing housework, for example, I'm up and down the steps, I'm doing this and that. It's not the same as being on the bike or the treadmill or weights or whatever else it may be, but I'm still moving. It's just different. And so what I did before my body has a chance to recover from. So
yeah, so that's why this is such an incredible conversation. I was trying to find, when you initially asked me this question, I want to make sure I don't miss how this originated, because this was a question from an individual.
One of our wonderful listeners.
And the question really revolved around recovery was the hierarching topic, but it also led into inflammation and it led into restorative care. And those are just, that's a great, weird connection between those. When you say them individually, not so much, but when you start looking at them, it's like, oh, wait a minute. You end up at the same, you end up at the similar place. So, like all good sermons in church, I'm always convinced that every good sermon, the preacher is also really preaching to himself, because it's a topic that is a topic that is of prime interest and prime concern to him. And recovery could not be a better topic for me because I am absolutely horrible at it. I am not from the high IQ school of we need to recover. I'm from the crazy work till you're passing out crew. And that is not, that's just my reality. My reality is if I could, I would go to work on Monday and I wouldn't leave until I had 40 hours in. Right, I just wouldn't come home. I would nap right there and just get it over with, do it.
Yeah.
I love the fireman shift because they go in and they just stay.
You grind.
Yeah, and that's my nature is a grinder, and I don't necessarily feel like that's always a complimentary thing. So recovery is a very tough thing for me.
And I can just throw one thing in there because to me, sleep is part of that too.
Absolutely.
And you don't like to sleep. I like to sleep.
Sleep when you die.
But I like to sleep, and I feel better when I've had a really good night's sleep.
Well, of course.
7.5 hours.
Of course, we're designed to work like that. But for me, my reality is that I really am. And if anybody listening that doesn't get, I really do believe in sleep when you die. And from a biblical perspective, we refer to death as sleep, and I'm all in. It's like at that point, we will do that. Now, the problem is my body just doesn't agree with it. If I could, I would take maybe 3-hour naps throughout a 24-hour period, and that's the way it would work. Up, do, sleep. Okay, back, up, do. So I don't have the wealth created yet that allows me to do that. So I have to function like a normal person. I have to go to work and I have to sleep. I have to rest.
Right.
So I made some notes, and I want to occasionally look at these to just stay on script here. And I wrote recovery, and I said we train. So here's the assumptions in this conversation. The assumptions are you are involved in fitness training or a physical oriented labor that requires rest. Okay, that's why we need recovery, because I know people that work construction who may not ever go in a gym, but they need to recover.
Exactly.
Because their bodies have been subjected to some physical stress throughout the course of a period. And so that rest is required. And we want to stay sharp, and we want to be our best. And that's why the topic of recovery.
Right, exactly.
So when we talk about recovery, the two categories that I broke it down into, for the sake of our conversation was strength training and cardiovascular training, because they are two different trainings. The different systems that are worked, the muscular skeletal system versus the cardiovascular system, and the recovery for each is a little bit different, not vastly different, but in some cases the recovery process might be different. Real quick, let me offer some anecdotes in terms of my training and my inability to recover correctly. I generally, the first topic of sleep is almost always, I am the last person in the house to go to sleep. Usually.
That's right. Yeah, you are.
My children usually message me because they know there's a good chance I'm going to answer. And I have friends that are learning that as well, that I'm always answering, and we'll have a conversation, and at the end of it, they'll say, "Why are you up?" And it's just, it's mine. I am trying to do better because I know I function and perform better. But for me, sleeping is almost harder than working out.
Okay. All right. Well,
stop and take that in.
You're conditioning yourself and other people to expect you to be awake and functioning and responding, and that's not healthy.
For 63 years, I've never let anybody down. I'm not saying it's good and I'm right. No. I'm just saying
that's another conversation, because we didn't have this access, all that time. But moving on to, so like anyway, you said, strength and cardiovascular.
If we don't recover, the repercussions of recovery are, in a nutshell, to break this down in layman's terms, your workouts suck if you're working out. I would imagine for the person who is in a physical job, it moves into the next phase of what I'm about to say. Your fitness sucks, but more importantly, not only does your fitness suck, but you are most likely going to hurt something.
Yeah, injuries. The
injuries closely trail behind. If there was a truck, if you will, if I'm looking at the highway and the trucks are going by, the first truck that drives by is impact on workouts and my overall performance. The second truck following closely is injury.
Correct.
Because most of my back injuries, and I, like most people, have things where we do things to disc and all that stuff all the time. And it's not been severe, praise God. It's been minor stuff. But most of my injuries, I can almost tell you every time, it was preceded by a report in my brain of fatigue, of being tired. Right. And I just did not have the smarts to stop and say, pull up, pull up, pull up. Now, as I'm getting older, I'm getting better because the repercussions are greater. Mm-hmm. The injury recovery takes longer. So I'm finding that I do have to do a better job of resting. I do have to do a better job of noticing, logging, and responding to fatigue or being tired when I first spot it. We talked before in some of our earlier sessions, I described them as flares.
Right. I remember that. The
flares come out, and the flares are letting you know you are not 100. Mm-hmm. Right. So when we talk about recovery, because I'm almost kind of jumping ahead. So let's talk about that recovery. So when we talk about recovery, I think we'll talk about recovery. We'll break it down into two types of recovery: a passive and an active. And throwing at the bottom, we'll talk about recovery as you age.
Right.
Okay. So let's take those. So passive recovery is a recovery technique that is absolutely required for an injury. I've had times before where I've done pull-ups, chins, and if I twist my hand a certain way, it puts an incredible amount of stress on my forearm.
So let me just ask you very quickly. So passive, does that mean that your body is just not moving?
Correct.
Completely at rest.
So when we say passive, it's completely at rest. And that's why I say injury is almost always going to require a passive. That's why when you see a basketball game and you see a guy twist their ankle, 99% of the time when he's going to the bus to get back, he's in a boot.
Right. So they want to isolate that.
Yeah, the boot doesn't mean it's that bad.
Right, but they want to isolate it for the rest.
But it's necessary to isolate it in complete rest.
Correct.
Take that foot out of take the whole thing out of a toe injury, take the whole ligament out of play. Take it all out.
Right. Okay.
Put it in the boot. And that's passive.
It's my favorite kind.
Right.
not to be injured, but just to be
most
still.
of us, I
Yeah.
think our inclination as humans is generally to sit instead of stand, to lay instead of sit.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's what's natural.
Guilty.
Right. That's a natural thing. I have a standing desk.
Right.
And I have weirded people out to the point that they're now used to me standing, and now if I sit, they start, whoa, whoa, whoa.
What's wrong?
What's wrong?
Why are you doing that?
Well, yeah, because if you stand for 8 hours, you get winded. Most people just don't see when I take a break from it. But that's the passive concept. And so passive is total inactivity, generally associated, or in my case, always suggested in the case of an injury. You're going to definitely go passive. Active is more or less a lowered down level of what it is that you do, right? So I think I had a note here when I talked about active. We talked about for a runner, it might be a walk, right? For strength training, it might be getting on a bike, right? It's a lower down activity. There was a list of, and this was all over the place, but I thought it was fun in terms of recovery options. So we're talking about passive and we're talking about active, but let me just read a list of options. This was from, I was all over the place in researching this, and this I think was from Self Magazine. Actually, no, it's so many people. I don't know. I think my sources were Self Magazine, Healthline. There was one Cachet. So there was a number of them. But let me just read this number of options that came up. Yoga inversions, dog walking, a healthy meal.
Yoga inversions. What's a yoga inversion? I'm just curious.
So almost anytime you're talking about inversion, it's when your head is in the position of your feet and your feet in the position of your something that's inverted, right?
Okay, got it. Okay.
I have an inversion, a yoga inversion bench. Some people do handstands. I have inversion boots.
Yeah.
All of those things generally, it's really funny because it sort of puts everything in reverse from blood flow to everything. My blood is kind of freaking out because it's going in a different direction. My lumbar, my back, everybody is in a different deal because now my shoulders are supporting my body weight as opposed to my feet and my legs. So it inverts my entire system. Well, that's my interpretation of it, and I don't believe I'm saying that wrong. So to invert it is a good breaking the rest away.
Okay, back to the fun things.
Healthy meal, lots of water, functional body weight exercises, foam rolling. We'll kind of hit some of those when we talk about tools and devices at the end. I think we have a little recap. A smoothie, a hot bath, pasta, beer, protein shake, a massage, complete rest, warm bath, icy hot, bubble bath, a book, protein, potassium, water, stretching, refueling, sweatpants, tacos, margaritas, pho, hot showers. Is it pho or is it foo? I always say that wrong. Did I say it right, pho? Pho.
Thank you, David.
The man behind the glass corrects me. Pho, hot shower, bubble bath, self-massage. Another person gives you a massage, 8 hours of sleep. All of those are options for recovery. And that was from a list of people who did everything from rock climbing to biking to running to powerlifting to all over the place. I think the takeaway is this, and we want to get back to talking a little more about the active recovery. The takeaway is this: you have got to take some time and learn yourself.
Oh, yes.
Because, and let me dig a little deeper into this. You talk about my drive and my always at it kind of way. That is unique to me, and I've never tried to sell that to you. Because, for example, today, now keep in mind as we talk about this, and I mention this a lot just to make sure that anybody listening, if you listen midway, you don't miss it. I'm talking from a 63-year-old's perspective. Right? It's a different perspective, but a weird 63-year-old. I'm a weirdo. I'm comfortable with that. There's very few like me. So, for example, today I lifted and I ran 2 miles. And I have goals and objectives. The average mile for a 63-year-old is 12 minutes. My average mile is 10 something. Today in my 2 mile run, I averaged 9 something per mile. Well, that's me. I'm a different kind of cat. Now, I got guys that are way faster than me that are my age, so it's not like I'm superior or better. It's just like I'm kind of different.
That's you, yeah.
Tomorrow, I'll flip right around and I'll run a 5K. Try to run a 5K every Sunday. That's a unique practice and it works for me. There was a time when I ran 5Ks and I needed a day of passive, nothing.
Right.
Go to sleep. If you asked me to go to the store, I looked at you and I grumbled because I didn't want to move. Now that lends itself to a weird, interesting science that was fascinating. As I looked at, first of all, I knew and could identify with things that I've seen with my own eyes. So I didn't need to read it. I knew it. But as I read things that supported this. This recovery thing is all over the place. It's not all over the place only for older people, but period. I know people, right? One of the people that I know really well played in the NFL forever. He played in the NFL and his whole world was built around speed. Now, here's where this gets weird. He never, and I'm trying to get him to write a book about this, he never, ever experienced a hamstring pull.
Wow, that's pretty good.
All of his entire career,
yeah,
he was never less than one of the two fastest people on the field. And he never suffered a hamstring pull.
Why is that?
Well,
I think.
So I have theories because there is no real science to explain that because a lot of people would do it. Every year in the NFL, teams are subjected to hamstring pulls all over the place. In the NBA, there's pulls. Okay. So if they could figure it out, they would do it. My theory is this. I think he worked at a level that made his game requirements smaller than his regular requirements. I don't think he ever pulled a muscle during the game because the game never called for anything that matched what he called for and required of himself when he trained.
So he almost exceeded what he would do
yes.
in a game as part of his regular routine.
Yes.
So if we take this back and take this out of the professional, player field and apply it to the everyday person, what are you suggesting?
I'll bring it back to me.
Okay.
I said at the beginning,
as you said,
my 5Ks required a complete passive day of rest.
Right. Okay.
I run a 5K. After I ran 2 miles today, I run a 5K, 3.1 miles tomorrow, and I'll go to work Monday and start the cycle all over again. I believe my body adjusted itself to the workload. It didn't need the same recovery because it got adjusted to the work. So what I'm saying is this weird way, I don't know if a passive recovery day would be required if I ran a 10K. Right? Mm-hmm. Or if I had a day where I exceeded my normal workload, that next day might require a passive day. But if my regular workload becomes this, then this does not need recovery like that. And so in other words, it's just because I've grown used to running at this point. I run 2 miles and don't even think about it. I might not have sometimes I'll use a work igniter of sorts, some kind of drink or some kind of caffeine kick to run 2 miles. I don't even need that anymore.
Okay.
Just go run. As long as I haven't eaten, that's a kiss of death that means to eat. But if I haven't eaten, I can run 2 miles almost all the time. And what I'm saying is my body has adjusted to that work. So I'm saying what I think I'm submitting here is that you want to shoot for and strive for a certain level of conditioning. And once you reach that level of conditioning, you will find that optimal recovery is only required on days when you do things that exceed what you normally do.
Okay. So, but are you then gradually building to that conditioning? Is that what you're saying? You gradually build the conditioning, and then you get to a certain level, and then you begin to
absolutely. I think you begin to require less. It's just like there's a certain amount of muscle that I built. Mm-hmm. And I don't have to work as hard to maintain it.
Right.
It's almost like it's established. Mm-hmm. My legs, I've never had atrophy in my legs. My quads became what they were from squats and indoor cycle instruction. I've never lost size in my quads because I didn't train the way I trained when I taught every day almost. Mm-hmm. But I do work. So I run now, I push. I don't have to push as hard because it's like a muscle. It's like a level set is established. And now I'm working to maintain that level set. And so what I'm saying in all of this is that most people reach a level of, it's like your body reaches a threshold where it's used to this work. Now, a sport like football is fascinating because every Sunday, you can't simulate Sunday anywhere else. So bodies are put in positions and compromised in ways on Sundays that they cannot compromise during practice. And so recovery has to be very strategic. Most of our workouts, though, now we're not in that space. We can work to a level that our recovery almost, and this is just my theory, all right? I think you can work to a level of your recovery almost being almost anything is recovery because your body's used to working at that level. That's really hard what I just described. I oversimplified something that isn't nearly as easy as what I just said. But here's basically what I'm saying. If I run 2 miles every day, I don't need recovery from that run. It's what becomes every day. My body just grows used to it. My body will eventually, and in short time, adjust and adapt to running 2 miles every day.
But I think what's important is what I was asking about a moment ago, and that is building up to that 2 miles. Because you just can't start out at saying, okay, well, I'm going to do 2 miles today. You're going to start.
And thank you for reeling me in. Yes.
Let's say if you're a walker, I'm just saying as an example, or you're riding a bike or whatever.
Yep.
Okay, so say you're going to say, I'm going to start with 1 mile and build 2 and 3. And they say today, hey, you know what? I can do 5 or 6. And then you do the 5 or 6 and it's like, oh my gosh, I feel terrible. So then I've got to bring it back down.
Bust it up, yes.
Correct? And I'm either going to be walking or maybe I'm doing something different from what I was doing when I overextended myself.
So let me say this. That's magic what you just said, because I started walking a mile each time out first. My first deal with all of this, because I am not a runner. That's not my deal. But I found that my body, it was almost like I was an indoor cycle instructor for years and years and years. Running was almost a shock. And so it shocked my system. And once I found that out, I kind of fell back. I think I was in the middle of compromising time available, what I had access to and all of those things, and kind of fell into running. And once I started to run, I really had to take it slow. I started walking a mile. That was it. I walked a mile, and then it was walk a little faster, and then it was running. My miles, and I've done a poor job of this. Probably if I went back and recorded it, I think my first miles were maybe in the 13-minute range, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm just saying, today I just ran a 9:30 mile. When I started, I was like 13 or 14. Right. But that was after morphing from walk to run. It's a slow run, then a pickup run, and now I'm running and really pushing. Right. Because I'm trying to deal with things like trying to push max VO2 and all these other things like that. So max VO2, air oxygen uptake, which is she's laughing because she actually is paying attention to it and she's trying to lower hers.
And I'm trying to raise mine.
Raise hers, and she's learning that the work involved in that is it's a lot of work.
Yeah, it's going to require some recovery,
and it requires recovery. Yes, because you're going to have to push and stretch beyond,
push beyond where I've been working. And actually, I find it very helpful when I'm using that fitness app, because that pushes me beyond where I'm going to push myself by myself.
And this is sidebar. This is one of the benefits of a lot of people hate running inside and hate being in that environment. I love it because I can say, okay, go 5. Okay, go 5.3. Okay, go 5.5. Give me this last quarter of a mile at 6 miles per hour. And at that, right, I'm controlling the time. I'm controlling it. I can't do that as easy. It doesn't work outside for me. And I'm sure that there's smarter people that do this all the time, and they can. I don't have the discipline or the tools to do it. Inside, I can go and I can just do all sorts of things. And when you do those things, that's when the recovery comes into play. Because now I'm pushing the envelope, and now my joints and tendons and ligaments and my cardiovascular system are being pushed and pressed, and I'm not going to turn around the next day and run.
Okay, so instead of running the next day, give me some examples of things that would work to keep you active, but allow your body to recover as you were, in this stage.
Yeah, I'd like to remember the name of where it was first introduced. I cannot, but the term that I've seen used is steady state cardio. So steady state cardio is, I might take, you've got to get into the heart rate game to follow all of this. So you find out what your max heart rate is, and there's a couple of formulas. Find the one that you agree with and stick with it. But you're taking something like 60% of max heart rate, and you're not exceeding that 60%. So if my max heart rate was something like 160, I'm probably doing a steady state cardio at 105. I get some movement, continuous movement, where my heart rate stays at 105, and I just get there and I stick it.
Okay, so if you're running, maybe you're walking, or maybe you're doing yoga, or swimming, or something that, so you're still moving, but just not with
at a reduced capacity,
and doing something different, perhaps. So you're not putting the same stress on those tendons and muscles,
right?
That feel like
because in the same space that you're talking about, when we talk about recovery, we gotta almost always talk about injury. And when you talk about injury, one of the injuries that's most common with people that work out is simply cumulative use injuries. Right. If I use my hands to grab all the time, there are going to be cause and effect, right, from that use. And then there's always the category of unexpected consequences. One of the things that happens when I grab all the time is my hands begin to callous.
Right.
And there's spots. It's almost like my skin is smart enough to know it needs to protect itself. So it begins to build itself, and it begins tissue that begins to just pad and hold that bar better, easier for me.
That's like blood lactate in your muscles, right? Okay. I know a little science.
Yeah. So.
But that's what makes it feel that way. That they're overused. Is that right?
And so for anybody that doesn't,
right
I have a note here. Let me just read this real quick. Blood lactate may accumulate during intense exercise and results in an increase in hydrogen ions in the body. This accumulation of ions can lead to muscle contraction and fatigue. By participating in active recovery, this accumulation decreases, helping your muscles feel less fatigued and keep you going.
So basically, there's a buildup in here, and you kind of ease the use,
right?
And the buildup relaxes and decreases.
Yes.
Right.
So
I'm breaking it down for you guys because he's talking in all these scientific terms.
The example I used,
I'm trying to give you real life.
was calluses and that was skin, but now we're talking about muscle. We shifted it, and that's the real thing, because that's the reason that we are instructed and directed to not work chest every day, right? Now, I have possibly, and maybe even now, insulted people, and that's not my intention, but I got to keep this real and honest. I've had people to come up to me and ask me recovery questions, and they were too small and they had so little muscle, the conversation was like, what are you talking about? They just never worked hard enough to have any kind of fatigue established at all. So,
but a person starting out might be more fatigued than you think initially, so maybe they.
Yes. I'm probably not
like
speaking to that person. I'm not speaking to that person. I'm probably speaking to the person that just kind of like, they went in the gym, they walked past the benches and were trying to figure out, should I walk past here tomorrow? And it's like, no. Well. I need some work done, pal. So yeah, I do think there are certain levels that if you stay under and the muscles are not stressed beyond a certain point, there are things you can do every day. But if you're going in and you're doing personal best and you're doing personal records, PRs, and you're really pushing in terms of cardio and time, and you're pushing in terms of weight and strength, that's another discussion.
Okay.
But if you're not monitoring any of those things, just trying to work out, there are workouts. Now, mind you, I mean, the test of all tests is if tomorrow your chest is sore. I don't care how much you lifted. I don't care how many reps you did. You need to rest.
Sure.
I'm not debating that.
Right, of course.
I'm not debating that. I'm debating the notion that everybody in the gym is working hard. I think that's what I'm kind of digging at, and it's not good and it's not fair. But I went there, so sorry.
Okay.
Right. So
go right ahead.
So we talked about different types of active recovery. I had some examples of that, and I had a list. And we talked about the walking. We talked about yoga. You and I have done that before. Generally, if I run on Sunday, what I love to do is a 2-mile walk on Monday. If I run a 5K on Sunday, go to work. Now, and I want to make sure that everybody understands that. Going to work, I'm working a regular job like a regular person. So I'm not sitting around trying to figure out what is the best thing for me to do from a health and fitness perspective today while I lay here on the sofa with my biscuit. So no, I'm going to work. And when I finish work, now I get up that morning, the jump rope is like, that's my go-to. I have a digital jump rope. I think I've talked to you all about that before. That's like the greatest thing in the world, because if you live on a slither of if you have the tiniest apartment imaginable, you can work out with a digital jump rope, and it's fantastic. Sidebar. The reason that the digital jump rope is so fantastic, blood flow is what we're trying to do, because blood flow, there's a recuperative component to blood flow. As your blood is flowing, I've actually listened to people who ate far more eggs a day, bodybuilders specifically, and you would think they had cholesterol issues and other issues based on what we've known notionally about eggs, and they don't. And the way it was explained to me was this: a pipe doesn't rust as long as the water or fluid is flowing through it.
Right.
And blood is the same way. Blood flow is critical because a lot of things naturally happen in your body when blood flow is occurring. And so jump rope raises your heart rate level, it raises the blood flow, and there's certain natural recuperative things that occur with that. That's why the bike is so effective for a big runner. Because if you're a big time runner, when you finish, if you get on the bike, you're not stressing the same ligaments and tendons, you're not stressing the same muscles specifically for running, but you're able to elevate your heart rate in a non-impact way, and it results in recovery.
And that's what I like about alternating the kind of cardio that I do.
No doubt.
And also what I'm doing with different weights, because it doesn't put so much stress on the same parts of the body every day that I'm doing it.
Yeah. Let me just finish one other point. I'm sorry about the digital jump rope. The other thing about the digital jump rope is we got this weird little twist in our body. The lymphatic system is a weird thing. And if you start to read about it, it almost starts, for me anyway, maybe I'm just a low IQ person, it starts to sound almost cosmic, because there's one part of your body that you rub and it affects another part of your body because of the movement of lymph fluid. Lymph fluid massages are like the tension I think I read was, if you take a quarter and slide it across the table, that's the amount of pressure to move lymph fluid. Lymph fluid is fascinating in this way. It is incredibly recuperative in its nature, but the fluid has no pump. So on its own, it doesn't
It's not
move.
going to move, right?
Take a wild guess at what causes lymph fluid to move.
The massage.
Of course, she would say that. So
Well,
I'm her
that's why I have
in-house.
them.
I'm her in-house knee treatment masseuse. And cure for all things. So she always is going to bend that way.
Well,
And it's
it
absolutely
feels
correct.
better after I get a massage, okay?
Absolutely correct. And even when others have massaged your knees, you've had some fascinating results from that.
Yeah, pulling them back and everything.
Right.
Yeah,
Stuff that
it
didn't
makes
sound
things
right.
Move.
It
It's like,
yeah.
yeah.
The other option for moving lymph fluid beyond massage is a jump rope. Jumping motions.
That makes my knees hurt.
Yes. But for those, the jump ropes don't make the knees hurt. Jumping moves lymph fluid, right? And it is a great option for recovery. And so on my days where I have done something that was a little more work or high end, if I could get it in, jump rope is something that I'll go to because it does help my recovery. I do also have the luxury of having bikes around. So the Endo Cycle bikes are fantastic recovery. As a matter of fact, sidebar. I didn't even tell you this. I had one day where I had a small, slight spasm in my back, and it moved from the left side to the right side. And I was like, oh, shoot, this Mr. 63 keeps showing up sometimes. I got on a bike, 102, 103. That's all it took.
Nice and easy.
Nice and easy.
Right. Just to kind of work it out a little
Blood
bit.
moved,
Right.
fluid all moving. Everything kind of makes a landing.
And that does help a lot, because sometimes I'll do enough and my knees will hurt and you'll say, okay, just get on the bike and do an easy ride.
Yep.
And that does help.
Yep.
Okay, let me ask you something else, because
Okay.
we're going to get to this, to wrap this up, this part of this up pretty quickly. And that is, at what point do you need to see a doctor?
Ooh, that's a really good question.
We're taking care of ourselves. We know some things we can do to ease
That's a good question.
day to day, but
So I had I wrote a note to myself early, and I had to go out here and find it, and I always create in my mind. I create like a matrix, and I work with this a lot. I don't know why this makes so much sense to me, but there's characteristics at each box, and it's more X's, and there's certain number of X's. It's kind of like time to see a doctor. There are some levels of pain that are unique.
I'd say something sudden and sharp.
Right.
Right.
I think some of those things I probably need to at least call my doctor's office.
Right.
Right. There are a number of things that I'm not going to try to describe because I'm not smart enough to, but the difference between a strain, a sprain, a tear, a break, you need to know those, and you need to understand your body and when that has occurred, because you'll need to refer it to a medical professional. But also time. Time. There should not be anything, according to me anyway, that increases in intensity over time.
So it should decrease. Is
That's what I'm looking for.
Let me just ask you, back up just for a second. What about swelling?
So swelling is kind of crazy because now you're getting into that whole, you kind of, you're moving into this whole, that inflamed thing, and where inflammation has occurred because of trauma or because of sometimes other factors. Again, it should not last for some extended period of time.
Like a day, 2 days.
Right.
I mean,
If I'm treating,
just give me an idea. I'm just giving people an idea.
If I'm treating an area that I experience swelling, and if in a day or two with my treatment, be it ice, be it some rub, something, if it doesn't begin to at least get soft, then I'm probably needing to talk to a doctor.
Right. Okay.
That's
it's good
me.
to know those things that are kind of emergency kinds of things that you would probably see a doctor about anyway if you had that.
I'm not
So
a
you need to make sure that
hypochondriac, but
right.
I have seen things. I just experienced a conversation with somebody that experienced an infection that rapidly went nuts.
Right.
And they needed to see a doctor much sooner than they did. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So I think that's the answer to your question.
Okay. So maybe we can wrap this up and talk a little bit about some of the takeaways that people need to remember, because there's a lot of information that we've given everyone in this. But if we can kind of summarize some of that, it might be kind of a nice reference point.
Yes. So I think we all need to have a plan for recovery. I think for most of us, the plans run amok because life shows up and we don't have windows of time to just say, okay, pal, what you want to do for yourself today, right? It doesn't work like that. I do think recovery has to be a part of your routine. I do think most people that I've seen, recovery ends up landing on a lighter version of a workout. Active recovery is what most people do. Passive recovery for most people, I've seen, and just my personal experience, passive recovery frequently lends itself and results in, I'm going to stop doing this all.
It can be easy to follow a routine if you're doing passive recovery, but yeah.
Yeah, the habits like that. If I'm going to the gym every day, I can have a work day and a light day, a work day and a light day. The light day, I can walk. The light day, I can ride. The light day, I can do all sorts of things that are below my threshold for real work, and that's active recovery, right?
Okay.
But you need to have it. We didn't talk enough about hydration.
Oh yeah.
Because you have to stay hydrated. I was at dinner last night and I started to get a hamstring cramp, and I realized I've just felt miserably the last 2 days on drinking.
The hydration is critical.
And a lot of it is just activity here. So hydration is critical. I think hydration and sleep are the most important elements that we need to add into that active recovery, be it walking or low riding. You have to do those things, or you're gonna be on a cycle that you see your maximum performance once every 2 or 3 months because you're not tuned right.
Right. Yeah. So that's preparing, like you said, because you need to start hydrating first thing in the morning. And if you're getting in those fluids, 64, 72 ounces, however many ounces your goal is per day.
Hydration and dehydration started days before you are experiencing the repercussions of whichever state you're in. Right. So if you're going to run a distance that is unusual, you got to start getting ready for that earlier in the week,
because your muscles are made up of so much water, right?
Yeah, you have to. And if you miss that, if you're draining and you're not getting it back, the electrolytes, and not just drinking water, you have to find out what you have to assimilate the electrolytes. You got to get all of these main things. I know people who drink tons of water who've been dehydrated,
right?
Because the electrolyte balance was off.
Yeah.
Right. So that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
I don't know if I answered your question. Takeaway recovery is critical for sustained and continuous performance. Continue to expose yourself to options that are available because there's always stuff. The cryotherapy, the salt soaking, the massages, all of that's available. Some of it is very expensive and it's hard to maintain. And I'm not trying to have a moment. I'm trying to have a lifetime experience. Consider needing to rotate or evolve your practices. Recovery that will last, something that you will do and stick to. You want consistent, repetitive recovery so you can have consistent results and you can continue to maintain and have the body and lifestyle fitness-wise that you like. Boom.
There's a lot in a nutshell because there's so much to it. It's a big topic to cover just in one session. So we might kind of go further next time around and talk a little bit about this and kind of the next things on our list.
Yes,
because they're all connected. The ones you first mentioned.
That word from her question, restorative care.
Right, restorative care. Yeah,
restorative care. Man,
yeah. Okay.
Man, that's a term that is new, but looking at that in a whole, that's some good stuff right there. So we need to get back in touch on that.
Okay, and there was so much information here. Also, we'll have notes in the YouTube. How about that? Because I can put a lot of information there. So we'll put a lot of it.
Hey, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to point at you like that. Another word that came up was inflammation.
Yes, that
So
too,
we need to do a whole segment on inflammation because
right.
that's a number of sources and a number of possible ways to resolve that as well.
Right. Okay. So we're gonna talk about both of those two issues coming up in 2 other episodes, and talk more about that. Put information out there that you can reference and refer to outside of what we're talking about, because again, we're not medical professionals, and we're telling you about our experiences in hopes that will help everybody who's listening and watching. But we're going to keep moving forward and giving you all the information that we have to help you live your best life.
Not a medical professional, but I messed up a lot. So they all don't do that. Yeah.
But we hope this helps.
Absolutely.
So if you have questions, send them to me at robin@maxwellsplaybook.com, and we will do our best to address them. And that you're watching, that you're liking this. Thank you so much for being part of it.